Hey, I'm Alicia, your non-monogamous relationship coach. Welcome to the podcast where my friends and I chat about our relationships, enthusiastic non-monogamy, polyamory, swinging, kink, and our lives. You'll get a candid peek into what makes it worth it to live life outside the box. And in case you're still wondering, nope, we're not monogamous. We've decided there's only one thing that you can't change your mind about. Listen to Kelli Moore and I all the way through because you'll hear it. Kelli and I are chatting about jealousy, opening a relationship and what that looks like, and what changes happen when you get pregnant and how hormones affect your sex drive and the openness of a relationship and how her and Connor have navigated that. Kelli Moore is the co-founder and CEO of Soulfire Productions. It's a podcast network for thought leaders, free thinkers, and visionaries. And she's also the host of The Kelli Show and OK Babe. Kelli's a really passionate person and really desires to help people see themselves more clearly and really believes that we can set ourselves free from expectations and people pleasing and the stories that hold us hostage in our lives. This has been just a really, really great conversation. You're going to get so much from it. There's so much wisdom in what Kelli has to share today. And I hope you enjoy. Oh, and also, if you do enjoy it, let us know. Shoot me an email, leave us a review, put a thumbs up or 5 stars or whatever happens on the place you listen to podcasts. I would love to know how the show is impacting you. And if you would like more deeper behind the scenes info and content, or to hear what my guests' best sex tips are, you can get all those on Patreon, patreon.com/notmonogamous. Go check it out. We'll just record and go, right?
I love it.
Yeah, I am really stoked that you're here. I was checking out all your stuff, all the things you do, and I was like, ooh, how exciting.
Thank you.
Fun new guests. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So welcome to Nope, We're Not Monogamous.
I love it. Also, your thumbnail for your podcast made me so happy. I was like, Connor, you have to see this. This is brilliant.
Thank you. I did that myself.
Good job.
I mean, the photo is a stock photo, but
yes, it's so great.
That's fun. That's fun. Okay, so I want to start by asking you what non-monogamy looks like for you, or what kind of relationship style you use.
Yeah. So my husband Connor and I describe it as being monogamish. So 99% of the stuff we do is together. We like to think of ourselves as a team. He comes from like the open relationship community in Austin. And so he just saw a lot of things and saw a lot of things go wrong and kind of learned what he did and didn't want before he even met me. And for him, he just had this like idea of, what if I was a team with my partner? What if we like got to experience really dope shit together? And there wasn't this like, I'm off here, you're off there, muddy waters. And so when I came to him and told him a couple months after we started dating, like, hey, I think I like girls, without knowing any of this about him or what he wanted, he was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And so we just started having conversations around what that would look like, because I didn't know anything about non-monogamy. I have been monogamous my entire life. I'm a relationship girl with one person. I had never been with women. So it was just like a lot of new things for me. And we started to talk about it, and it took time. I'm sure like everyone you talk to, it's not usually like diving in head first. Although I respect people who can do that. There was a lot of really uncomfortable conversations that had to be had over like a 6-month period before we ever acted on anything. But we just realized that we wanted to have experiences together. And then the great thing about Connor is that he was really supportive of me having experiences with women on my own. He was like,
Mm.
hey, you just realized this really important thing about yourself, and I want you to experience that and not have me there or a man there to feel like you need to put on a show for, feel like you need to please me. Like, I really want you to have the experience. So I have been with women on my own, which has been really amazing for me to just like explore what that feels like. And but yeah, so we can start ourselves monogamish and do most things together, which looks like threesomes and playing together in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that story. That's so good. Oh, my girlfriend and I actually just recorded an episode about figuring out, like, are we queer? Like what, like going from like straight monogamous to, oh hey, there's boobs and I like them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, right? And then also, don't
Uh-huh.
you feel like you just don't want to label yourself?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I feel like at first I was like, "Oh, I'm bisexual." I had this whole coming out episode on my show. It was like this whole thing, and I was like so quick to label myself.
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Am I bisexual? Like maybe I'm just more curious because I'm in a relationship with a man and now I'm married to a man, but I also like to have experiences with women, but I don't particularly want to be in a relationship with a woman." But then we dated someone together, and then she and I like really connected and I fell in love with her. So I was like, okay, well maybe I am bisexual. It's just a very confusing thing. And I feel like
Uh-huh.
we sort of put ourselves in these boxes when in reality it's like flavor of the day. What am I into right now?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, so he was non-monogamous before you guys met or had some experience with that.
He had like experience in terms of being exposed to it, but he was
Mm.
never in a non-monogamous relationship.
Oh, so you guys got to explore this together.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say, what was the biggest challenge of opening up like that?
My jealousy. Yeah. My like
Relatable.
yeah, I think that's probably most people's biggest problem, I'm guessing. My feeling of being jealous of him giving attention to someone else, of him receiving pleasure from someone else, and also just feeling like I'm not enough. That's kind of my
Mm,
MO my whole life is like I'm not good enough. I want to be perfect. I want to be the best. And there's like if you're giving attention to someone else, that means I get less attention.
mm,
And so that's been something I have worked on for the last 3 years because I realized that it's not about us being in physical experiences with other women. That's just highlighting my deep core wounds. You know,
yeah.
your deepest triggers and fears come forward in these situations, which is such a gift and it's also fucking uncomfortable and it sucks sometimes. And you're just like, why am I putting myself in this situation where I'm going to be this uncomfortable? And I realize now it's because the access you have to your pleasure and to your expression is incredible when you're able to work through this stuff. And we were really lucky that we were going through somatic therapy with our practitioners early on, and they were in a monogamous relationship. So they were able to explain to us and let me know like jealousy is normal. There's nothing wrong with it. Like you get to explore this and really understanding the difference between leaning into what my head and my programming and my ego is telling me versus what my body is telling me. Because my ego and my head would be like, you're disgusting. He doesn't love you. He's never going to choose you. But my body was like, this is fucking hot and I really love it. And it's confusing. And
Mhm.
so I'd be like, I don't know what to do with this. And so I think just the more I leaned into why do I feel insecure right now? Why do I feel triggered? What's going on? I was able to just ask myself better questions and get curious. And it's not completely gone. I don't know. Maybe I'll always be jealous, but I think that I've been able to embrace it and realize that just because he is, you know, having sex with someone else right in front of me doesn't mean that I can't enjoy it. I actually get a lot of pleasure from that now that I allow myself to just be present and not worry about like, what does this mean about us and what's going to happen? And he's going to run away with this girl. And so, yeah, that's definitely been the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that they told you jealousy is normal. Like
Mhm.
it's just a feeling that we have, like all the other feelings. And I was just telling someone, like, I've always been a pretty jealous and possessive person, but, um, I'm much more I'm willing to like, those feelings don't serve me. They don't, like, make my life better. So, like, sitting with that discomfort and getting through to the other side is absolutely worth it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I just feel like when we let our emotions run us and when we let them dictate everything, we lose access to what's possible. You know, we keep ourselves inside of these tightly contained boxes that most of us were raised in,
Mhm.
whether it's because of your religion or your parents or just where you lived, you know, what you were exposed to. We don't know what's possible. And so it's like the more we feed into those old programs and patterns, the more we're just chaining ourselves and keeping ourselves prisoner to our own bullshit, and then we don't ever access all the things outside of that box. And I don't know, for me, especially early on in our relationship, I had gotten to a point where I was like, I am tired of my old stories. Like, I'm tired of who I was. I didn't even like myself before. I want to rewrite the whole thing. I want to start from scratch and just rewrite this. And what does that look like? And so I think it takes a lot of willingness to get curious and take responsibility for your
Mm.
actions and how you feel, and also, you know, have discernment between what's your emotion and what's coming up for you versus what's your mom's emotion and what's her program that's still inside of you. And
Yeah.
that fucked me up.
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
Yeah.
uh-huh, yep, yep. Yeah. Yeah, and what is my emotion versus, like, the story that I'm telling? Because 'Cause they're not the
Yes,
same thing.
correct.
Yeah,
That's why journaling for me, especially in the beginning process of this, was so important, because
yeah.
we're so good at telling stories and
Mhm.
we're so good at making things far worse than they are.
Yeah,
And I had to get things out of my body, and I had a lot of shame, and I didn't want to admit certain things or desires or feelings to anybody, including Connor.
yeah,
And so I would write them on the journal and I would be like, oh my God, I made this out to be this giant monster and it's really not that big of a deal. But I had to see it in front of me. I had to let it leave my body for me to see it as a separate energy and
yeah.
realize, oh my God, I've been letting this dictate my whole life. This deep-seated fear and wound that has spiraled into some giant thing. I get to let that go now. And it's such a sense of freedom and release of this
Mhm.
thing that's not even yours, that's like holding you captive.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's good. Earlier you had said something that I think most of the people listening can relate to is that feeling of, like, not being good enough, and comparing yourself. And I'm curious, what was what was most impactful in kinda overcoming that or coming to the other side of that?
Experiencing pleasure with other women.
Mm.
Um, I really feel like my experience, especially alone with women,
Mhm.
it was a it was a mirror to see myself more fully.
Yeah.
Like, I would look at them, and no woman is perfect, right?
Right.
And so I would see them as so perfect and amazing. And I would notice, like, oh, you know, she bends like this and she has a roll there, or she has cellulite, or she has like thick hips and small boobs, like whatever all the different traits of a body are that we can judge. And I'm over here like getting super turned on by this girl, thinking, oh my God, your body is amazing and I'm obsessed. And what it helped me see is myself, because the way I pick myself apart, and the way I see I'm not perfect and this is wrong and why do you have this dimple here? Whatever it is, I'm like, I'm not judging them. Why am I judging myself? Like, what am I doing? This is so messed up. And it was such a beautiful, like, feminine connection where I started to see that energy as so connected.
Mm.
And the way I judge myself or the way I judge other women is just a reflection within me.
Mhm.
And it totally shifted my sisterhood wounds and my connection with other women. It healed so many of my friendships, the way I
Mm.
compare myself online. Like, of course, especially I'm pregnant, I feel like a whale. I'm like, am I ever going to look the way I did before? You know, I'm in that headspace right now. So, of course, I'm going to go compare myself. But I think for the most part, when my hormones are a little more regular, I can see other women and I can look at their beauty and appreciate it and not say I'm less than because she's beautiful, right? Or because she's talented or because she is successful or has this thing or whatever it is. And it just shifted so much in me. And then I think the other part of that was like I started to appreciate watching Connor experience pleasure with someone else and the girls experiencing pleasure with him,
Mhm.
to the point where early on it was like I had to get 99% of the attention from the other person and he had to give me 99% of the attention. It was like if
Mhm.
I'm not the center of this little threesome universe, I'm going to fucking explode because I was so freaked out.
Yeah.
And the last time we had a threesome, I was basically just not super involved. And the girl was way more into him because she's kind of like me, like super straight, but like sometimes into girls. And I was just like on the other side of the bed, like touching myself, so turned on by watching them. It was the one thing that I had feared so much of, oh God, what if she comes in and she's more into him and they're doing a thing and then I'm not included? I kind of like made myself not included on purpose and I loved it. And I remember she left and Connor was like, are you okay? Like, was that okay? Blah, 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 checking on me because I've had many meltdowns. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that was actually fucking great. And he was like, really? I'm like, yeah. I didn't know I would be okay with that. And I thought it was awesome. And I think it's just being in those scenarios and learning that other people's pleasure doesn't mean that you have less. And I got so much pleasure out of that because I allowed myself to, and I opened myself
Mhm.
up to being present in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. You chose it. Oh, I love that. That's
Yeah,
great. Um, so obviously you're pretty open about your life.
yeah,
um
slightly.
was that always the case? Was there a coming out for you and Connor?
Yeah. I mean, I've always been in the public eye. I was a really high level volleyball player on the cover of magazines at 16. One of the top recruits in the country. Like people have always kind of watched me and I've been
Mm,
in the light. And then I was a TV host for 14 years. So I was covering the Lakers and the Dodgers. So again, like people got a glimpse into my life on a regular basis. And so I just kind of got used to that experience. And then having a podcast, I shared a lot about my chronic illness healing journey, and then getting into spirituality and personal development. And then when I started having my, sexual awakening and realizing that I'm bisexual, and then Connor and I are together, it just sort of naturally like became the thing that I talked about. It was like, okay, and now this is Kelli's new thing. And I took everyone along for the ride and I've been really open. And I actually, at the end of last year, really felt called to shut that down. I felt like, in a way, I was doing things for validation or to
mhm.
show people, like, look at how progressed I am. Look at how much work I've done. I can have threesomes and like, I'm so fucking woke. And it wasn't why I was doing it, but I felt like when it came to the podcast, especially, it was like I had to share because I had this obligation to be this
Mm,
person that I had made myself out to be for people.
yeah.
And I just felt this, and I think part of it was because we were about to get pregnant, is like I felt this deep need for privacy and
Mm,
to process on my own and to not share every intimate detail of my life. Um, And so Connor and I have a show called Okay Babe. And for the last few years, it's been all about threesomes and non-monogamy and just sexual exploration and jealousy and communication and all of that. And this year it changed because we changed.
yeah.
And I think we had both, sort of realized that talking about this every single day and this being the thing, that's just not how our relationship is. Like, we don't talk about this every single day. We're not having threesomes every single day, even when I'm not pregnant. Um, and so it was like, can we just let this be more normal for us? Can we just let it be like a thing that we do, but not the center of our world? And so it's definitely shifted, and I'm sure it'll shift again once the baby comes and the way we talk about things. But I just think we've done a good job of honoring where we are and
Yeah.
not sharing just because we feel like we have to because we owe somebody something.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's almost like this. like drive to sensationalize things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think too, I mean, I'm sure you experienced this. It's like you can talk about non-monogamy in any form or fashion. Um, and it becomes like this romanticized fantasy of, oh my God, I could have all these partners and all this freedom and all this expression. And yes, that is totally part of it. But there is a lot of shadow side to living like this. There's a lot
Mhm.
of things that come up. There's a lot of hurt feelings. There's a lot of like shit blowing up. And we've seen it with many of our friends. You know, we have a couple that's going through a divorce right now because it was like holding gone wrong. And it got really bad. And so, you know, I think we're aware that we want to educate people of what's possible, but we also want to be really honest about the positives and negatives, or however you want to phrase it, that there's
Mhm.
always going to be two sides, that the grass is not always greener.
Mhm.
And just to really have a foundation, be really smart in the way you go about this, in your communication and your trust and transparency and all of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. I don't think enough people talk about that aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of times people will say, like, oh, but the people I know got divorced because they opened their relationship. And I'm like, it's not a non-monogamy issue. It's a relationship
Exactly.
issue.
Exactly.
That was a relationship problem.
Yeah. I know, it's so funny, right? It's like, oh, well, they were, of course he fell in love with some other girl and left his wife for her. And I'm like, yeah, hi, do you know the divorce rates? Like, what do you think is happening with monogamous relationships? And I'm also in support of like, be monogamous, be poly. I don't fucking care. Like, do whatever is best for you.
Yeah.
But you can't always blame it on just the relationship structure.
Yeah.
That's why I said foundation and communication is always going to be at the forefront. If you don't
Mhm.
feel like you can share your desires and be expressed as who you are as a person, whether you're a monogamous or in a poly triad, like it's never going to work. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. 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 If you can't show up as your full self. Um, you're pregnant. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So how has that played in for you?
Yeah, it kind of fucked things up a little bit. Um, so we had to do IVF. So this has been the longest, worst year of my life because I
Mm,
started hormones in December and had to stay on them until I was 10 weeks pregnant. Went through the retrieval procedure, the transfer, and I mean, I was like very suicidal a couple times. I felt very out of my body, which for someone who had chronic illness for so long, who's dealt with sexual assaults and has like really he has had issues with like being very disconnected from my body. I worked really hard to connect, and
mhm.
I've been in my body for the last 4 or 5 years, and so that was really jarring to like go back to feeling super disconnected, out of my body, not in touch or in control of any emotion I had,
Yeah.
um, just not even knowing how to function.
Mhm.
And that's not sexy, you know? And in that, also screaming at my husband for God knows what,
Yeah.
like being in the middle of an argument, forgetting how we even got there.
Yeah.
Um, and him just being so nervous, like, where did my wife go? We got in a huge fight one day, and it was one of those fights where you like follow each other around the house and it
Mhm.
lasts forever. And you're like in the living room, in the bathroom, in the kitchen. And we ended up in the garage. And I remember him looking at me, and he finally said the thing he couldn't say. He was like, I am so scared that I just married you and I don't know where my wife went and I don't know if she's ever coming back.
Mm.
And I looked at him and I said, I feel the same way. I am so scared that I'm never coming back.
Mhm.
And that was really important. You know, I'm talking about communication, like to just be really honest with where we were, because
Yeah.
we weren't having sex. We didn't desire each other. I was on birth control because they put you on birth control to start IVF, which made me unattracted to him. It
Mhm.
like changed my smell and the pheromones. And I was like, I don't think you're attractive anymore. So there was that. And then
Mhm.
I'm super bloated and crazy and depressed. And so it was just this back and forth where we were like, how do we connect? So we would have like obligatory sex every couple of weeks to just
Mhm.
try and stay connected. And it was not great. Um, and he couldn't talk about other women. I couldn't hear it. I was
Yeah.
just so sensitive. And that's kind of our thing, is like, he'll send me pictures of girls that he thinks I'll like, or she's so hot. And I was like, I can't hear any of this. And then I said to him one day, I don't even know if I'm attracted to women. I think you made me do this. And that was horrific, because he was like, oh my God, what happened? And then he's questioning himself, because he's like, I swear I didn't make her do this. What happened?
I'm
And
not that guy.
yeah. And he's just feeling super defensive and awful. And so that went on for months. And we didn't really find our groove until probably 6 weeks ago, and I'm 6 months pregnant. So it's been a while. But we've just tried to find intimacy in other ways. And it's just taught us a lot about communication and hearing the other person, and also remembering who we are without all the hormones, without pregnancy, without all the shit, like he has no sex drive right now because he's off of his testosterone, and he has low testosterone. So that's something he struggles with. So even if I wanted to have sex right now, he's just like not feeling it, and that's part of life. It's like ebbs and flows and chapters, and it's not all about sex. And I'm learning that, as amazing as it is, and I know it will be again, it's just not the priority right now. And it's hard sometimes, because I'm like, just want him to like pull my hair and call me a whore and like slap me on the ass. But like,
just
also,
do it already.
Yeah, but like, also, if he penetrates me in the wrong way, I like might pee myself. So it's like, what do you really want? So that's kind of, I don't know. That's my long roundabout answer of how sex has been.
Yeah. Gosh, thank you for sharing that. That is relatable. I've had a couple of kids.
Yeah.
And also really vulnerable. And I'm curious because this happens, right? Like relationships ebb and flow. And I'm always curious how people find that connection and intimacy when they aren't having sex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My love language is touch, and
Mm-hmm.
Connor's is quality time. And so I think we've really leaned into those things. And I hadn't thought about that really until this point, but we've been trying to do a lot of fun things together, and cooking together, and just playing with the dogs and getting the nursery ready. And then also just like a lot of cuddling. Like every morning he's been snuggling me and just being super sweet and kissing my stomach and talking to the baby, and just really being intentional about knowing that the drive for sex is not there, but the love isn't gone and the playfulness isn't gone. And we make fun of each other and we're silly. And I think it's almost like going back to dating times.
Yeah.
Like what made this fun aside from sex? What made this fun? What made us laugh together? What made us feel good together? And really hearing that from the other person and knowing how to show up for them in that moment. And I think we've done a really good job of that.
Oh, that's beautiful. I
Yeah.
love that. I think, relationships are like constantly going through transitions, but there's not very often when it's easy to like pinpoint the transition, like to recognize it until you're on the other side. But pregnancy is one of those times when you can go, oh, we're in transition. We're doing a thing and it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've learned, like, even transitions, fights, like things that feel pivotal, like these pivotal moments in relationships. I didn't like really love change, because I'm really controlling. So I'd always want to know what to expect.
Yeah.
And that's why I would always panic when a fight would happen. Because I was like, this makes me uncomfortable and I don't really like it. And it feels like something's coming and I don't want that. And I've gotten really comfortable in the shifts, the transitions, the fights, because first of all, Connor and I fight pretty well. Like, we always fight productively and fight forward. There's never steps taken backwards after a fight, which I think is amazing. But I think it's the more you can get comfortable in those transitions and know that things are always changing, and being open to things changing for your highest good, and allowing the communication and the honesty to be the driver for that. you're always going to end up in a better place, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And I think that it's all a lesson. Like, what is it I get to learn from this? That's what I tell myself now in fights. It's like, rather than, oh my God, something's wrong, I fucked up, he's mad at me. It's like, okay, where do I take responsibility? Where is he just dealing with his shit, projecting it onto me? And what he's yelling at me, but he's not yelling at me. He's actually yelling at himself. I just happen to be standing here. That's been my day to day, which is super fun. I'm like, cool, I'll just keep standing here.
Let me grab a mirror real quick.
Yeah. I'm like, do you love me? Or are you mad at me? And he's like, this is not about you. And I'm like, then can you go yell at somebody else? But just being able to take ownership in those moments and know that there are opportunities for growth and for lessons, and that they don't have to be the end of the world. I'm such an end of the world person. I'm like, oh, everything's crumbling. I messed up. I personalize it all. It's like, but what if it's not? What if it's just an opportunity to see something from a different angle or through a new lens, or a lesson that you needed to have in order to move forward and have more of what you want?
Yeah. The end of the world thing. That is, yeah, I get that. It's so scary, right?
Yeah.
Like this could end in disaster. I'm probably going to die from this fight.
Yeah. How many times I've been like, oh my God, I'm going to get divorced while I'm pregnant. Everything's over. I'm not dramatic at all, obviously.
Yeah. What, gosh, there's so many good nuggets here. What would you say is what makes a relationship successful?
Honesty and communication.
Mm.
I mean, I have seen so many people be dishonest with themselves about who they are and what they want.
Yeah.
And then that is brought into the relationship with the partner. And then there is dishonesty projected and experienced. And it doesn't have to be like cheating dishonesty. It's just about, like, are you more into personal development than your partner? And you have been sort of hiding that part of yourself because you don't want to grow too fast and them not keep up. And that's like a self-betrayal.
Yeah.
And you're holding yourself back and catering to someone else. And it's just dishonesty all around.
Yeah.
And I think we're programmed to not say the hard thing and to not have hard conversations. And, you know, part of why Connor and I are going at it right now is we were talking about finances yesterday. Like, who the fuck wants to talk about finances?
Oh, nobody.
It's the worst. And we had to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I am the most willing person to have hard conversations now, because I was raised by a mother who was super manipulative and narcissistic and loved to fight and argue and be right. And so I became a people pleaser who was never the one to have a hard conversation. I just cowered.
Yeah.
And I have learned how unhealthy that is. And I am willing to make other people uncomfortable. And it's not about me being right. I am the first to admit I am wrong 99% of the time. I'm totally okay with saying, I'm so sorry, I fucked that up. But it's about taking responsibility, being honest, and not cowering or betraying ourselves to make someone else feel okay. It's always going to come back to bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
And you're also teaching people how to treat you.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we create these unhealthy communication paradigms and patterns, what do we think is going to happen? Yeah, so I think communication and radical honesty every single day, and being willing to be uncomfortable and knowing that discomfort doesn't mean that something is going to fail. Discomfort actually can be the best thing ever for your relationship. Whether I just had to have a really uncomfortable conversation with my COO and my assistant. Like, and it all turned out amazing because I took ownership of where I fucked up, and they were like, oh my God, thank you so much. Right. And that sucked, but I did it, and we're way closer and more bonded, and we're going to create something even better than what I thought we were going to create because of it. Whether it's in your work life, your friendships, or romantic, or your parents, you
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to have hard conversations to honor yourself so that the relationship has the ability to thrive and stand on good legs, not these like false truths.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. Two things came to mind for me. One, I pictured when you said talking about how uncomfortable it is, right? I pictured like climbing a ladder barefoot.
Yeah.
You know, like the rungs hurt your feet, but
Yes.
you're making progress and you're going up higher.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other piece that I saw was the other thing when you aren't speaking your truth and when you aren't being really honest when you're trying to show up the way you think your partner wants you to or think other people want you to is you're not actually giving them the opportunity to respond to you. They're responding to like a fantasy or an ideal and not like who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We decide for other people,
Yeah.
and that's not fucking fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, can we give people a little credit to make their own decisions, whether it fits into how we want them to respond or not?
Mhm.
Like, we have to let go of the control and manipulation. It's
Yeah.
like, I always talk about people pleasing because I've been so good at it for so long. It's like, people pleasing is the ultimate form of manipulation because you're
Mm.
doing something so that someone will respond to you the way you want and make you feel the way you want to feel.
Yep.
Excuse me. That's benefiting you. That's not okay. They're responding to a false identity, like you said.
Yeah.
It's like, if you could be more of yourself and have faith in people to be who they are, and especially if they're people you love and trust and respect, like, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. And if they fuck it up and make us feel like shit and it ruins everything, then like that's okay. But I think more often than not, people will surprise you with how understanding, compassionate, supportive they are. They're in your life for a reason.
Yeah.
And we just don't do that because we're so hell bent on knowing what their response will be. We decide it for them so it makes us feel more comfortable, because God forbid we let someone else just have a response and then we have to respond.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. It's this like control to try to stay safe.
Yes.
And but it doesn't. It doesn't do
No.
that.
No.
It doesn't work.
No.
Oh, fantastic. Um, okay, I'm gonna ask you this. What is something that anyone can do for free that will help them approach relationships in a healthier way?
Journaling.
Yeah.
I always come back to journaling. It's a safe place where you will not be judged.
Mhm.
And I really believe that so much work happens in relationships, like real time fights, communication, things go wrong, things go right, like transitions, whatever that is. But I think that in order to show up as your best self, your most expressed, your most confident, your most trusting of you, you have to just be honest with yourself first. Like, it doesn't matter about anyone else. So the more we can be honest about who we are, what we're letting go of, our desires, what we want out of life, whatever that looks like for you, the more you can get that out on the pages, practice that muscle of just like letting things out, then you can take that to a relationship and feel more confident in emoting and sharing who you are and knowing like, okay, the journal didn't judge me and I said this thing and it felt really good to get it out. Okay, now I'm going to take this to a human and I'm going to say, hey, I may not have like even fully processed this, but I just want to let you know this is like something that I've had on my heart or something I feel or a desire I have, and I would really love to share it with you. And then we come from a much more grounded place within ourselves, trusting of our own wants and desires, and we're less affected by what that other person says. But if we don't do that, and then we're just like trying to communicate and trying to like do all these things, and we don't have that trust built within ourselves, then we're so reliant on the other person and their approval or disapproval or judgment. And we kind of lose ourselves in that. And so I think like the journal is almost that anchor point where I can really land and be myself. And then I can take that part of me that I've practiced with and take that into relationship and be a better communicator and better at sharing myself and being raw and vulnerable and knowing that I'm okay regardless of how they respond to me.
Yeah. I love that so much. It's such a this is fantastic. You know, they say that things come into your life as they're supposed to. And this is like such a good reminder to me because I
Mm,
haven't been journaling and I'm like, I've got all this stuff swirling in my head. And I'm like, oh my God, you're totally right. I need to start journaling again.
totally. It's so simple. I mean, I will fight myself on it for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm just like, ugh, I don't want to write it down. I'll just process it in my head. But there is something so like magical and cathartic about getting the words on paper and
And it
then just like
transmutes
let it
it.
go. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. That's amazing. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for making an impact in my life today. Okay, is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners today?
I mean, we've covered so much. I think the only thing is just to remember this is something Connor and I said from very early on. We just wanted to have a relationship based on our own rules.
Yeah.
And we wanted to leave space for that to constantly change and evolve. And it has. You know, when we first started, it was like, hey, we want to try this thing and it seems cool. And I had a laundry list of boundaries like,
Mhm.
don't look at her like this. You cannot kiss her. You cannot penetrate her. You cannot do blah, 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 blah. And I was
Mhm.
just so scared. And now, like I told you, I'm like watching my husband have sex with another girl in bed with me while I'm basically not involved. And I'm like, wow, have we come a long way?
Look, let me grab the popcorn real quick.
Exactly. I'm like, wait, can I film this? That's not creepy. Um, but it's like, and now we're not with other people and we're in a closed relationship and we're exploring what that looks like. And I just think that it's so important for people to realize that you don't have to do things like anyone else. You don't
Mhm.
have to call yourself monogamish or poly or feel like you have to fit into some open relationship dynamic. You don't have to tell anyone about it. You can tell everyone about it. Like it doesn't matter where you fit. You don't need to label it. It's like, can we just do what feels good for us? Can we negotiate? Can we renegotiate? Can we have boundaries and then those boundaries shift? Can we be respectful of each other and really allow ourselves and our partners to grow in our sovereignty and our own
Mhm.
experiences and to not feel chained to some dynamic or paradigm that has been going on for so long that may not fit us, right? Like my husband doesn't believe in monogamy and it doesn't work for him. And he knows that about himself. And so he wanted to create a life that supported him and his desires. And I respect the hell out of that. Am I okay with him having sex with someone else while I'm pregnant? Like, no, it doesn't feel good to me right now.
Mhm.
But in 6 months or a year, when we have a kid and we want to try new things again, like I really want him to have those experiences and I really want to have the ability to have those experiences. You know, it's
Yeah.
I get a lot of messages especially like people that listen to Okay Babe and they're like, "Well, your husband gets to do whatever he wants and gets to fuck all these girls and blah blah blah." And it's like you're just a vessel for his pleasure and he just like talked you into doing this for himself. And I was like, I was basically in love with another woman and dating her while in a relationship with my then boyfriend, now husband. And he was fully supportive. And I'm the one that gets to go off and have nights alone with women. He does not. So I actually think I'm in the winning scenario on this. But we just have like all these beliefs about like, oh, well, obviously you're having threesomes, like your husband's making you. Like, no,
Mm.
I actually have a higher sex drive and am more of a driving force in this whole thing.
Yeah.
And it just happens to check the boxes for him and me. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I just think people get to make their own rules.
Yep.
And if you want to change your goddamn mind every day, change your mind. Like, who's to say that that's not okay? And just make sure you're fulfilled and expressing yourself and meeting your own desires and supporting your partner and exploring theirs.
Yes. Yeah. That's like the best nugget. You get to change your mind.
Yeah.
Period. I
Mhm.
think people really, really worry that like if I make this decision, then that's it. We've made the decision and I can't change my mind ever again.
Mhm.
You get to.
Yeah.
Anytime you want.
Yeah. About anything.
About anything. Yeah.
Like,
Except for
it's
having kids.
okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna change your mind on that. Yeah, but it's like, it's truly, can we allow ourselves to evolve? Can we allow ourselves to change our minds and not worry about other people who may not be doing that themselves? If people are stuck in their ways, that's okay. You don't have to be.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Okay, babe. Do you have 2 podcasts?
I had the Kelli show, but I ended it
Oh,
last year.
there you go. Okay. I
Yeah.
was like,
I
I'm
think
pretty sure there was something else.
I think there's probably a mom version coming post baby. I don't know what that looks like though.
Okay, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Connor was like, we should change the show to Okay Baby or Okay Kids. And I'm like, I don't want to be a parenting advice podcast.
That's a lot.
I
That's a
know.
lot. That's a big bag of worms there.
Yeah. I think there's more judgment in that space than there is in talking about threesomes.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been
Oh,
such a pleasure.
oh.
You're a joy to talk to.
Thank you. I've loved this. It's been so fun.